The year is 2100. Mass extinction has changed marine life. New Jersey and New York are in danger. Sea levels have grown 6 feet. What I just described will be the future if global warming does not stop. I don't think any of us want that to happen. We need fish and seafood, we need cities, and we need oceans. They are such a big part of our lives even if we don't notice it. The reason for this lies under the waves. You see, oceans have absorbed more than 90% of global warming caused by humans. But they are reaching their limits now. Coral reefs are dying and so are marine life. Marine life is in the most danger from these 3 effects of global warming. First, I'll talk about coral bleaching. Coral bleaching is when the water becomes too warm and the coral expel the algae living in their bodies, which causes them to turn completely white. The problem with coral bleaching is, right after the bleaching, the coral is very weak. This means that if another bleaching or warming event happens within 2 to 3 months, the coral will most likely die. An example of this was in 2005 when the US lost half of its coral reefs in the Caribbean due to one massive bleaching event. A satellite comparison of the previous 20 years confirmed that the thermal stress from the 2005 event was greater than the previous 20 years combined. As you can see here, in a lot of areas, the maximum DHW, which is domestic hot water levels, range from 1 to 5 degrees. But in a lot of other places, the domestic hot water levels range from 8 to 16 degrees. The coral reefs in those areas were 80% bleached, or 60% bleached. Sadly, almost all the coral reefs that were bleached died. Next, I'll talk about loss of breeding grounds. If you want to know about loss of breeding grounds, you need to know what breeding grounds are. Breeding grounds are basically places where any animal can find a mate and breed. The problem is, when we lose breeding grounds, we lose marine life. It is impossible to continue breeding without breeding grounds. One example of a breeding ground is coral reefs, but as you already know, coral reefs are dying. This is catastrophic for animals such as hawksbill sea turtles because they depend on coral reefs as an ecosystem. A lot of breeding grounds have started to die. Over 50% of the world's coral reefs have been wiped out, and another 40% is estimated to be wiped out in the next 30 years. Other breeding grounds, such as sea lion breeding grounds, have been wiped out. 30 to 40% of other breeding grounds have been wiped out. All this means that many animal species have gone extinct, and many others are to come. An example of this is pteropods. Pteropods are basically small snails that fish such as herring depend on. According to The Insider, the increased acidification of our oceans, which is already happening as the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide, is already affecting shellfish. In some areas, the rising pH levels means that some shellfish's shells have not been formed properly, as you can see over there. Here is a picture of a healthy pteropod shell. Here is a picture of a damaged pteropod shell. As you can see here, a lot of places on the pteropod shell have been bruised, scratched, and the shells has not been formed properly. Finally, I'll talk about loss of oxygen. In an article by Princeton professor Curtis Deutsch and Princeton associate Justin Penn, they modeled future marine biodiversity under projected climate scenarios. They found that species such as dolphinfish would be imperiled as warmer waters decrease the water's oxygen supply while increasing marine life's metabolic demand for it. This basically means that as the ocean temperatures go down, there will be less oxygen in the water, but the fish will need more oxygen. This means that there will be a 20 to 30% decrease in body size. In the same article by Curtis Deutsch and Justin Penn, they wrote, unless greenhouse gas emissions are curbed, marine biodiversity could be on track to plummet to levels not seen since the extinction of dinosaurs. I think that says it all. We haven't seen an extinction this bad in almost 2 billion years. They also wrote that fishing and marine deaths in 70 to 80 years could equal global warming marine deaths in 2 to 3 years. An estimate of 650,000 marine life are killed each year from fishing and hunting. Multiply that by 70 to 80, and you get almost 50 million. 50 million. That's only 2 to 3 years of global warming. This just shows that how terrible global warming is. So the next time you go to the aquarium or the ocean, don't just think about how amazing these creatures are. Think about how much danger they're going to be put in, and think about how important they are. For more information, visit my blog or scan this QR code.